This story begins at the world called Isgard. At a city, the crowd gathers, as they sing praises for what seems to be a parade. They continue to applaud, as the hero made his way down the road, accompanied by his entourage. At an alley, two siblings are running, hoping to catch a glimpse of the ongoing parade. While running, the boy suddenly stopped, as a hooded person walked past them. The girl also stopped to take a look at the person, as then, the boy reprimanded her, saying to stop staring as that person is a dark mage. Inside a palace, a woman is staring at the window, as then, she detects someone approaching. She turned, only to see that it's the dark mage from earlier, named Minold. Minold presented her with a head, stating that the last threat to Isgard has now been eliminated. The woman proceeds to thank him, but the dark mage cuts her off, saying that there's no need for that as he only wants her to fulfill her end of the promise. The woman told him to not worry about that, asking him if she should call him by his real name, Kim Min-jun now. She asked him if he really wishes to return to his original world, as Min-jun answered resolutely. He also commented that, using him to this extent is enough. The woman sighed, telling him that if he were to stay with the Empire, the various bad treatment that he's received thus far will be rewarded handsomely, but Min-jun cut her off again, telling her that they should stop acting now. Min-jun asked her what they can give him. They brought him here, and used him like a slave, and now they still want him to stay, and thus, Min-jun asked again what benefits they can give in return. The woman insisted that they can give him whatever he desires, as Min-jun cuts her off once again, telling her to give him Korean fried chicken. The woman was astonished, as Min-jun continues, stating that the food they have here were disgusting, and they only feed him high-calorie biscuits, that is no worse than feed. The woman told him that they can improve that, but Min-jun told her to bring him a monstrous PC with incredible specs, and a fast internet connection, as he wants to play a game called Dungeon Power Fighter. And thus, not having the ability to do so, the woman just lets him have his request to return. At another part of the palace, the woman asked him to stand at the place where he was originally summoned. Now in place, she will now lift the protection of the saint. Although it's called protection, it's a seal used as a leash to prevent him from fighting the woman. As then she begins to remove the seal. Min-jun asked if she's not afraid that he'll try to kill her once the seal is undone, the woman retorting that she'll accept it since she was the one who summoned him. After the seal was undone, she proceeds stating that she'll now begin to remove the powers that he's obtained thus far. Hearing this, Min-jun smirks, casting magic to bind her neck. The woman asked what he's doing, Min-jun replying that there's no way he'll give up the power that he worked hard for in all the years he's been here. He then releases her, as he proceeds with his plan. The woman was shocked, as he opened the dimensional portal on his own. The woman asked how he did it, Min-jun replying that he's reached the peak of dark magic and thus, he could do so. With this, he says his farewell, as he jumps into the portal, then disappears. At a modern apartment building, a strange light burst forth, as Min-jun was teleported back to Earth. Looking around, he grabbed his phone, hurriedly opening an app called Dungeon Power Fighter that he wanted to play so badly. He was ecstatic to be able to play again, but he was met with an error message. Soldiers are running down the street, as they were seemingly looking for something. They took cover at a corner, as they proceeded to execute their operation. Turning the corner, they were surprised at the sight of a random civilian walking about. The person turned out to be Min-jun, as the soldiers called for him to come. Min-jun complied, but suddenly, the soldiers told him to run. As then, a monstrous-looking wolf charged at him. Min-jun noticed the wolf, stating that it's not even worth one punch, but he noticed that his demonic energy is completely gone. Thinking fast, he grabbed it by the head, then proceeded to pound it to the ground, shocking the soldiers. He mocks the monster, stating that even without demonic energy, the training he had at Isgard is enough. Min-jun asked himself how monsters appeared in this world, as he turned to the two startled soldiers. In a military car, the soldier asked Min-jun if he really doesn't have any idea what's going on in the world. Min-jun replied saying that he has no knowledge since he was living abroad. Min-jun wondered what happened the last 2 years, as when he was 7 years old, the phenomenon called dungeons appeared. Inside them came out monsters. To combat them, superhumans called the Awakened also appeared. Their abilities surpassed that of the average human. They established the Hunter Corps, a new military group, which completely wiped out the monsters. And thus, prior to being summoned by the saint, Korea has no danger of being harmed in civilian areas. The soldier was suspicious of Min-jun, as the whole world is in the same boat as Korea, but he decided not to pry seeing Min-jun's strength. Min-jun asked him for information, the soldier replying that he'll tell him everything that he knows. One day, 2 years ago, dungeons suddenly appeared much more frequently, which also grew larger in size. But that wasn't the biggest problem, as giant monsters also started appearing from these dungeons. Because of this, the military couldn't contain the dungeons anymore, so it started to spread to civilian areas. Since then the military tried to fight back, but were lacking in numbers. The soldier asked him how old he is, Minjun replying that he's 21, as then, the soldier informed him that he'll probably be enlisted soon. Since the situation has worsened in recent years, all troops are now required to serve for 5 years. Minjun was bummed out, as his initial plan after returning was to just loaf around and play dungeon power fighter, but now he has to serve in the military for 5 years. Then suddenly, he got a text message telling him the date for his enlistment. Minjun didn't believe it, thinking it was just spam, but the soldier told him it's real and to go to a PC cafe to confirm it. At the PC room, Minjun was in tears, as he was finally able to play dungeon power fighter. At the cafe, he was also able to confirm that what the soldier told him was the truth, as he looked up news articles on the subject. Minjun thought of a plan, since his enlistment date is tomorrow. If he possessed all his powers from Isgard, he would have been able to clear all the dungeons on his own, but for some reason, his body is depleted of demonic energy and thus, he can't use dark magic, although his strength that he gained still remains. And thus, he got an idea, as he resolved himself to clear the dungeons by himself. The next day, a lot of people gathered to enlist in the army. Minjun commented about the depressing atmosphere, as he wondered if it will be as hard as Isgard. Inside the building, the military personnel gave instruction to the new recruits as they welcomed them. The instructors hurled insults along with their instructions. At this, Minjun was awed, thinking that these instructors are being nice, compared to the ones he had at Isgard. As then, the instructors asked if anyone wants to apply to the Hunter Corps, but they were met with unenthusiasm from the crowd. But then, Minjun raised his hand, as the soldiers asked him to come forward. As then, the floor cracked, as he leapt from the ground, soaring above the crowd, then finally landing. The instructors were shocked, as Minjun introduces himself. In Isgard, northern region, the Forgotten Canop. Minjun is talking about his job as the Dark Mage. Even though they have insane skills, if they run out of demonic energy, it's over, since unlike mana, demonic energy will not naturally restore itself. And thus, demonic energy is restored by collecting them from monsters, which is very inefficient, since you need demonic energy to hunt monsters in the first place. And since his image as a dark mage is the worst, there's no one who will party up with him, so if he runs out of energy in a dungeon, he's basically dead. And so he asked a question: what is the best way to replenish demonic energy and also retain it? But there's no one to respond to him, as he is only surrounded by dead monsters. But then, a huge spider appeared. It's the hidden dungeon boss, Arachneist. The monster screeched, as it launched at Minjun. As then, Minjun got up and punched it in the head. And thus, he answered his own question: the most efficient way to get demonic energy is to use your physical strength. At the present, Minjun is inside a room as he waited for the Hunter Corps representative who'll assess him. All the dungeons that appear in Korea are managed by the army, and the first priority regarding subjugating them belongs to the Hunter Corps. They are a unit of highly skilled individuals, where you can advance in ranks as long as you prove your ability. And so, if he enlists in the Hunter Corps, he'll be able to clear dungeons, and also possibly encounter monsters with demonic energy, and thus, he could get his old strength while also ranking up. And that's how his plan goes in his head, as then, the Hunter Corps representative, Sergeant Lee Sungo, enters the room. The commander told him about Minjun, as the sergeant asked him if he really has hunter abilities. To confirm, he asked him to open his status window and tell him all his stats. Minjun was unamused, as he complied. They also has status windows back in Isgard, but he barely used it since it only told him his stats. And thus, he called it, but then, he was surprised, as there was an error message. The sergeant was astonished, thinking Minjun is kidding with him. At a Hunter Training Corps center, inside the battalion commander's office, he was talking with someone as he greets them. The person was a woman, named Sun Yunsu. Yunsu asked if she's being called because of her father, stating that she doesn't want any special treatment during her time training. The commander denies this, stating that it has nothing to do with her father, General Sun, as he told her that he just wanted to say a few words of encouragement. She feels embarrassed, as she thanks him, as then, the commander saw a car arriving. Arriving at the facility, Minjun was in awe seeing the building. The sergeant told him to not get too excited, as he's only here to be tested. Minjun asked what the test is about, as Lee Sungo presented a large red crystal, telling him if he can move it by an inch, he'll pass. The mineral is called the red stone. It's a byproduct created by dungeons, and is incredibly hard and dense, and thus, new recruits aren't expected to be able to move it. Seeing the test, Minjun mocked him, saying that he's glad the test is simple. Seeing this, Lee Sungo was unamused, as he thinks he's full of shit. The commander and Yunsa was there, as they watched Minjun from afar. The commander heard the reports on him, apparently having incredible physical abilities, but his status window has an error, so he's interested about his abilities. Minjun got ready as he recognized this material, since it also exists in Isgard. Thinking he could easily push it away, he decided not to, as he took a punching stance, which confused the spectators. He gathered his strength in his fist, as he then struck the crystal. It formed cracks, as it then shatters to pieces, making Minjun smirk. And we will have to end the recap here. Subscribe so as to not miss out on future recaps, or you can click on the video on your screen to watch the previous recap.